Welcome to Dexter, New Blood. Who dis?
Who dis?
This is Michelle, producer lady.
And I am at Ref Marsh.
This is a new podcast that we are doing in celebration of Dexter, New Blood returning.
Yeah, after as soon as they announced it that it was going to come out in November, early November, must have been 3 months before, maybe less. I was like, we have to catch up. I have not watched Dexter since it was on air, but you did not have a similar.
No, so I was in the military when Dexter was on, and so I hadn't really kept up on many shows. I was just traveling too much, and so when I got out, that's when I had to go back and watch it all. And so at this point, I've seen Dexter just several times because I would just always have it playing in the background. So I was pretty up to speed. But Marsh here had to catch up and rewatch it, and it was really, really helpful because once we jumped into New Blood, it just everything just made it easier to understand. We think, but we're going to break down what we think of the new season and just all the similarities and all the how the storytelling has spilled over and the evolution of the characters.
Yeah. And when she says she rewatched it a bunch of times and always had playing in the background, she means it on a terrifying capacity. I would come out in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, and she's just up at 2 a.m. with Dexter playing, like she's studying and getting ideas.
I wasn't, but
only time will tell. You guys heard it here first. Time will tell. But yeah, I'm glad that we went through it all too, because it was 8 seasons. Each season's like 12 episodes, and we crushed it. I honestly think we crushed it in 2 months or so. I feel like we started it. And I was like, oh no, but maybe it was 3. I'd have to go back and look. I don't want to say the wrong thing there, but I do think that it's lended a different viewpoint to this show. A lot of people had a hard time with how the show ended originally, how Dexter ended, and I don't remember hating it, but I remember feeling off about it. I remember when it happened, I was like, I don't know how I feel about it, but I definitely didn't hate it like the way that people hated it. I felt like there was something more to it that I didn't latch onto, and I honestly think on the rewatch there was something more in there that I got that I was like, oh, okay, wait, I think I see this in a different way. This is actually pretty good. And I do think that the lens of having seen all of it has definitely given us a different perspective on the things that are coming up for here. I only heard today from somebody that they've heard that people are not liking this new series, and I
really,
I have not heard that. And I completely disagree with it, because I feel like this version of Dexter is taking a very artistic, down to the minutia approach to the Dexter story and how it might look 10 years later.
And I think just being Michael C. Hall fans, as we are, knowing that he would not sign on to a new Dexter without absolutely loving the script and the storytelling that it was. I think knowing that is like, oh, okay, this has to be good, because he would not sign up for garbage.
Yeah. He was adamant, and even on interviews about it, that he wouldn't just jump on a Dexter reboot for no reason. And then as this one came about, he said that it seemed like the right everything, that it wasn't going to be a money grab, more or less. There was more to it. I think he's a really artistic guy. Matter of fact, only one of us has seen him perform live, if I do say so myself.
All right. Okay.
On Broadway. Because he's that level of artist. He's an artist who performs live, performs on Broadway.
Yeah.
He gets involved in his characters.
Oh, yeah.
He did an audiobook that I listened to, which I was listening to it in the midst of all the Dexter stuff, or kind of towards the end of the series there. So there was a certain level of it that was a little terrifying, but he did an audiobook version of Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I was like, oh, well, I love the movie. I've seen that play live as well. Like, it sounds good. And Michael C. Hall, my dude. The very beginning of it, I was like, this sounds like Dexter's narration of events, and this is going to end in bloodshed. But it didn't. It didn't.
Good.
Yeah.
I've been really enjoying it, but I think that's because every episode we've been watching of New Blood, we have to pause in between because we're just talking about it so much. So hence this podcast.
Yeah. New Blood, who dis? As we've been watching it, there's a lot of them we don't even get through. I mean, a lot of them. There's been 2 so far. We haven't sat down and just seen in a single episode all the way through without having to pause it 4 or 5 times and being like, okay, did you catch that? Okay, am I seeing this right? Okay, explain to me why this is going on. Like, we're breaking it down as we go, and we're like, let's just talk to people about it, because maybe they don't get it because they're not breaking it down. They're just taking it in as they're seeing it immediately.
Yeah, so where do we want to start?
Yeah, where do you begin but the beginning?
Oh, God. Okay, well...
Let's start with the end of the last one. So I remember there was a lot of people complaining about the last one, and there was a little bit of hoopla about the narration. And I remember one of the words was that there was very little over...
Are you talking about episode 2 of New Blood, or are you talking about...
Talking about episode Dexter.
Okay.
Yeah, Dexter season 8, episode 12.
Okay.
Which I
just clarifying.
Yeah, I do believe it was called Remember the Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. But at the end of it, so he's narrating over a lot of it, but in that last episode, a lot of it was not from Dexter's perspective. A lot of it was from the other killer's perspective, so it didn't break down to his mind a lot. A lot of dialogue, a lot of what was going on with Deb. So there was less overall narration of Dexter, and I think people took that to mean that there was just none. But there was a lot, all the way up until the very, very end. And when he gets on the boat with Deb to go out into the middle of the ocean there, he says flat out that all he ever wanted was to feel like how everyone else felt. And how they feel in general, like as humans, like people. Because the beginning of the show was all about how he didn't feel anything.
Right.
He gets out there and he's just all like, now that I do, I want it to stop.
So, bit of foreshadowing.
I think a little bit of foreshadowing. He wants it all to stop. He wants to stop feeling that way. He does end up going out there, and right before he dumps the body, he says he's on the phone with the little kid, with Harrison and Hannah, and he does say something along the lines of he hurts everybody who's close to him.
Yes.
Foreshadowing again, he's going to kill himself, right? He does not, as it shows him as Lumberjack Dexter with a beard in silence, no music, no narration, and he does look directly into the camera with this look of being miserable on his face, bearded Dexter in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, he just the end of that show, he just looks so just emotionally distraught without saying anything. And I was fine with the ending myself because I thought that it wasn't the end. Not knowing, of course, when they were gonna do a new Dexter, but I'm really liking this new one. It is probably not sitting well because with everyone, the audience. I could see that because it's not the same, but
it's definitely not the same. It's
not going to be the same because it's new. It's kind of like, Frasier wasn't exactly like Cheers. I know it's a completely different show, but like shows are not going to be exactly the same
even when they're inspired by the same. I would say this is taking a whole different artistic kind of approach. This is almost there's art in the production in a way that there was not an art in the production in the original series. And I'll say with that we can start in on the first episode of New Blood, which I believe was Cold Storm. Just from production value alone, it starts with like radio music.
Yeah,
like
soundtrack.
A soundtrack.
Yeah.
It wasn't a score. And that's just it. The original Dexter series was only a score.
Yep.
Unless there was a reason. Unless there was a reason for a song to be playing, like Sergeant Batista putting on a song and listening to it.
Yeah. In the scene, but
it was otherwise all scored, all instrumental, all Dexter music, all very Dexter-esque brooding stuff, or even they did different variations of the Dexter theme in different speeds and different instruments in different tones.
Yeah.
but it was the same song in different ways, which I always thought was a really cool,
Yeah.
beautiful way of doing that. This is taking a different level of approach. It's starting with a soundtrack and not a score. It's showing you the name of the episode right on the screen,
which is also different.
That's never happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are just not used to it. I think they're so tied into, original Dexter that they can't see past what they've already seen.
Yeah.
So I think people just have to kind of come at it from, noticing these details, that there's a reason for these changes. It's not just whipped together for no reason.
Well, and to be devil's advocate,
okay,
or in this case, the Dark Passenger's advocate.
Okay. Sorry, guys. This is what I have to.
I would say that there are bits of the production type editing that I'm not a huge fan of. I didn't love that the name of the episode was written in snow and then a car drives through it and it goes away. I did think that looks cool. But at the same time, I was like, was that necessary? Did it add anything? Does knowing the name of this make any difference? As we talk about episode 2 later, it's in the beginning opening of that too. The name of the episode is promptly a part of the scene.
Yeah.
It does feel a little bit like there's somebody who does production, like as someone who edits videos, I feel like I'd be like, you know what I can do that'd be pretty cool. And then they go, oh yeah, it is pretty cool. But did it add anything? Nah, probably not. It was just kind of cool.
It's also the intro. Like, that's a part I can kind of just, I'm fine with letting something like that go by,
Yes.
To me, because it's in passing almost. But the intro,
yes, I wouldn't dwell on it at all.
Yeah, no.
I saw it and I was like, don't love it, but it's already gone. Keep
Whatever.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think just the intro itself being so different in that original Dexter, you had these beautiful, I always thought they were beautiful shots. They reminded me of just photography class, honestly. Yeah. But there are these close-ups of his daily rituals, his making breakfast and steak and
grapefruit.
Yeah, everything.
Grinding his coffee even. I loved that shot of the coffee beans getting whirled up.
Right. Everything insinuating murder, basically.
Yes. Now, this is what it was, though. It was the everyday mundane zoomed into so much that you see the violence beneath.
Yeah, the macro.
You take the absolute mundane normalcy of an everyday procedure like getting ready for work and making breakfast.
Flossing, yeah.
And showing that underneath the surface is pure violence. You know what I mean? The ripping of the flesh of him just cutting his ham. Mm-hmm. The just dripping hot sauce on his eggs looks like blood is dripping.
Yeah.
Even the beginning with the mosquito just landing on him, he smacks it, kills it, sees blood, and he smirks in the background. Mm-hmm. It's this idea that you're going to see the story of a man who's doing everyday mundane things.
Yep.
And if you were to look beneath the surface of that, you'll find that there's quite a violent story to be told.
Right. So the beginning of this character, I think, is what people are forgetting. They think that is the entire character forever. And it's clearly not, because if you've seen Dexter, you've seen the evolution of cold-hearted Dexter at the very end, having emotions, finally having emotions, and not just any emotions, a flood of emotions, which is what I think we're actually seeing in the beginning of New Blood, that introduction of these flashes of sharp flashes of just violent, well, I don't know if you want to say violent, but they're done in such a chaotic, with such chaotic cuts that you just think, wow, this is insane. What is happening? This isn't what I remember of this nice, beautiful intro of original Dexter. And it's like, yeah, well, it's not going to be the same because obviously he's going through a lot. It's a different Dexter.
It feels like the new intro with the ice kind of breaking and just the loud, sharp noises as it just cuts from thing to thing to thing real quick, and it's almost like setting you up for what's about to happen. It feels like less so that there's this dark passenger violence beneath him, but this chaos in his mind that he's trying to almost...
like a jigsaw puzzle.
Kind of, yeah. It almost comes off like a strobe of noise, almost like a schizophrenic episode, kind of, but he's not quite there. You know what I mean? He clearly always has the voices. It was previously Harry. It was his own.
Right.
In this season, we find out very, very early on it's going to be Deb. And it feels like there's a lot of chaos in his mind, even though he's in a most peaceful setting.
That actually, now that you mentioned schizophrenic, I could definitely see that as we do see Deb come and go in New Blood. And you see him talking to her, and then you see the absence of her. It does look like, oh, he's an insane person talking to himself. More so, I think, than original Dexter, where it's very subtle. You would see Harry, and then he would come and go. But it almost seemed like he's talking to himself in a comforting way, and less so in New Blood, to me.
New Blood, he's definitely not being comforted. In the first episode... We try not to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yep.
She was very comforting to him. His only friend, almost, it seemed like.
Yes.
And she was almost lovey-dovey, like she almost cuddling with him at the breakfast table and
in bed
with him. Yeah.
Saying, I love you. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. It's been almost 10 years.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know if they're going for schizophrenic, but I do know that if schizophrenia is what little I know about it is a hereditary thing that you're like capable of it, and there's oftentimes it's not triggered until trauma, right? And there's something about Dexter that was never traumatized by what traumatizes others, but he does seem very traumatized about the loss of Deb. It was the one thing he has never been able to handle, and it could have triggered a different level of his issues, of his dark passenger.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about it now, you mentioning it, I could see by the end of New Blood a very different Dexter, like, almost like the person just wandering the streets, yelling crazy things. I could see that from this start of, oh no, he's off the rails now. He's got no Harry, and Deb, even though she's dead, she is nothing like Harry at this point. But do we want to start with, I guess, the first episode?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first episode starts with with Dexter running through the woods, and then coming to a stop after he spots the white deer and does not shoot it, and he falls to his knees. And my first thought was, why is he doing this? Why is this his new routine? But then I thought about it more, and I was thinking, well, it's kind of like, if you haven't done your routine in 10 years, and if you were someone like an alcoholic, and then you went through AA and you stopped cold turkey, you would do something to fill that void, whether it's a hobby, if that was your normal routine. I feel like there's something else that would happen.
Even smokers, when they stop smoking, they'll start sucking on lollipops.
Straws. Yeah.
Straws. Nowadays, you see CBD that people will use to still smoke without it being smoked. I've seen people go from the nicotine vaporizers to the CBD vaporizers as a means to stop smoking without having the negative nicotine.
Yeah.
But it's the habit of, with those ones, it's the habit of having the vaporizer. I need that habit to continue, but I need the content to change. This is the habit of hunting, but the content changing. I'm not going to physically, or the way it used to be, I'm not going to computerize hunt and stalk and find the people and follow them and take them back. I'm going to literally, on a very raw level, chase an animal, scope it to the point where I know I could take its life, and then I won't.
Yeah, and just that rush of adrenaline you see him have, and then it's almost a sense of disappointment, I thought, when he falls to his knees, and it's like, I'm so close, but I'm not, I can't, and it's kind of like, oh, like, all right, well, you've been at this for 10 years, so continue, because this is as good as it's going to get for him in this new life.
Yeah. and he takes care of his farm, and he goes ice fishing. So he does seem to be much more in tune with nature, complaining about how cold it is a little bit. But yeah, I mean, and then right before the intro, he goes in there, he's sharpening knives, and we think, oh, what's he doing with that? But then you find out it's pretty innocuous.
Yeah. And then we are introduced to his girlfriend, the cop.
The cop, she pulls him over. I think this is an ongoing theme already, where he continues to be, because he's so close to the police department without being in the police department, we're constantly being put in the position to think, oh my God, he's getting caught. And every time it's like, oh wait, no, it's his girlfriend's a cop. Like, because this is one where he gets pulled over, they go through the whole routine, which is a little bit weird. Well, I guess it's not too weird because then they have sex. I was like, it's a little bit weird to do that level of almost foreplay, role play stuff.
Yeah.
With the, oh, let me see your ID. Oh, that's your name, all this and that. And I was like, why would you do that much? And then, yeah.
Well, small town. And plus, I mean, that happens.
If it's role play and they're actually having sex, then I guess that makes sense. You know what I mean? But it was, at first I was like, it's really weird. But then they're having sex and I was like, oh, they're in character.
My first thought when I saw her, I was like, she kind of looks like Deb. And that kind of, I wasn't sure if that was on purpose.
Yeah, maybe.
But.
Yeah, a little Freudian in a way.
I don't know. That was my thought. So we're introduced to a bunch of new characters of him working at this new little shop. It
turns out he was sharpening the knives for the butcher in town.
Yep.
It was part of it. Like he charged like $25 to sharpen knives, and that could almost be, in the analogy before, a non-alcoholic beer. Yep. I will sharpen the knives so I get that.
I get that feeling.
The feeling of it, feeling the sharp blade, knowing. Yep. Smelling that metal fibers.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like I just want to hold a cold glass of something.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, all right, well, this can kind of maybe fulfill that for a little while.
A little bit of that flavor, but just enough to go. When I wasn't drinking at all, I was drinking non-alcoholic beers because I just enjoy the flavor of beer, and I missed it. But I didn't want to get drunk or anything, or even on accident. I didn't want to have any alcohol, so I started drinking non-alcoholic beers regularly. And it was great. It probably earned me another 7 months worth of not drinking because I was just no longer missing the flavor. So maybe if you're not missing the flavor of these sharpened blades, then it makes it easier for you to go this long without killing.
Yeah, so we're introduced to some new characters in the shop. Really annoying rich guy.
He wants to buy a big massive gun to make his buddy's gun look small. He like pulls a knife on Dexter in the shop. It's real fucking weird.
Yeah, that dude I didn't love, but obviously we're not meant to like him, so was just rolling with that.
But I think that's where it all begins, right? Because we're here for a story, right? I know that before we went live, you made mention, like, it's a little weird that in the first episode he kills. But in my mind, I was also like, well, that's the whole point of waiting 10 years to do the next episode, is that he hasn't. Like, the whole point of the story is to be like, look, he started killing again. It'd have been a little weird if we were like a season and a half in and be like, yeah, something's going to trigger him eventually. Something had to trigger him now. And I think this is the guy that is the start of it. This guy is the guy that makes Dexter start fantasizing about killing actively because here's an asshole who deserves it.
Right. Which I think is interesting in that he's not... He doesn't have a Harry, so he's no longer following it to the T, you know, and obviously he doesn't have the same job, so he can't go to that level of knowing, right? Yeah. He doesn't have the lab anymore. So we see him just gather information and ask questions. Dexter goes back to the rich douchebag who bought the gun.
Yeah.
The rifle, I should say, the machine rifle. And we're
introduced to his buddy who's doing coke and says all this, like, he murdered that motherfucker with the boats. Like, because the whole thing was that there's these scars and there was a boating accident. That was the one thing that was flagging this guy from getting his gun, was a boating accident that had happened, and whether or not the guy was at fault or not. And this friend of his said he was definitely at fault. They were playing chicken. The guy yielded, goes the other way, and then he turned to T-bone this dude. So the guy dying is his fault because he was doing it on purpose.
5 people died.
5 people.
Yeah. So
he's all coked up and tells him that, and Dexter's all like, meets the code.
Yep. And then
As soon as the guy gets the gun, he has to tell the guy you can't use the gun while you're drunk. And the guy's like, too late. And then pulls the gun and points it at Dex. Dexter then fantasizes again about beating the shit out of this dude.
right. And honestly, even his fantasizing about punching this guy is stuff that the audience can relate to, who hasn't had a crappy job where you have this awful customer that you just want to punch. You're like, oh, this idiot, this person, I just would deserve whatever he gets. You know, like,
Oh, yeah.
like it was just such a retail moment. I felt like retail customer service, horrible customer. I thought, oh yeah, totally. He's totally right in that fantasy. However,
Yeah.
it continues.
And
Yeah.
these are the first few times you're starting to hear not just happy radio music. So I think that's really important.
Yep.
It's starting to go a little bit away from the soundtrack, a little bit more into the scores. But this is just like eerie music, Dexter. And I do think that was a big jarring thing to get through for the first like 20 minutes or so of this.
Yes.
Every time a new scene was coming, it was some other radio song. And it was like, this does not feel like a Dexter show.
Yeah, I was like, this is way too happy. That was my first impression in the
Yeah.
beginning. I was like, what is this?
And I think that was part of the production art of this one, is how do we make him not feel like him? The whole tone of this show is taking you to Dexter being different and feeling different. And what a cool way to do it than to say, let's present him different in every way from a production value. So as he gets to the point where he starts to get back to the same old Dexter, you're going through the same almost struggle he's going through, right? You're hearing this music and you're like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't seem the way it's supposed to be. Something's almost too happy. And as things get a little bit darker and a little bit darker and a little bit more eerie, you start going like, oh, this feels right. To the point where when he finally starts narrating again, what we believe to be the dark passenger really coming back, you almost breathe the same sigh of relief from production value of just like, oh, here we are.
Yeah.
You know, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Right. So Harrison shows up and he's all like, are you Dexter Morgan?
And Dexter's all like, Harrison. And then all of a sudden, so now, instead of hearing narration from Dexter, which we haven't at all, it seems to be completely replaced with the voice of Deb.
Yes.
And so Deb shows up and she's all like, you got to get rid of this little turtling. Everyone you love goes to shit, and starts listing off everybody.
Yep.
LaGuardia. Rita.
Herself.
Yeah, what was the first one? Dokes.
Yeah.
And then goes, in me.
Dramatically.
Lifts up her shirt. Sees a fucking bullet wound. Reaches in there all... and pulls out a complete bullet with casing and all.
Yeah.
And that was the part that I went, oh, come on.
Yeah.
That's not even how bullets shoot.
Little dramatic.
Yeah, it was all like, you just pulled an unused bullet from your side. Like, you couldn't have been shot by... someone had to place that.
But yeah, it gets dramatic.
But that was, I think, me being nitpicky about the production on that one. Because I think it also...
Okay.
I think maybe a lot of people honestly don't realize what's fired out of a bullet to begin with. Mm-hmm. I think it's surprising to say, but I think if they shot it and it was just a little nub, people would be like, what is that, a BB? I don't know. It got me. I was like, oh, come on. An unused bullet.
He has a nightmare where Deb dramatically jumps out from
fishing hole.
From the fishing hole and
then is dragged back down by this weird shadowy zombie thing.
Right.
With a ton of screaming. I was like, fuck.
Yeah. So Deb is turning out to be more terrifying than ever.
Yeah. This is where I think the first real, what do they call them? A jump scare in horror movies, where the whole point of the scare is just that something happens fast and loud and you just go, huh?
Yeah.
Because, like, it was just a surprise. It wasn't that it was a mentally scary thing so much as just all like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Right.
Like when someone just comes up from behind the corner and just goes, oh, hey, buddy. But you didn't think they were there.
Yeah.
So it scares the hell out of you. And all they did was say, hey, buddy. This was the first time I think they did anything like that in any Dexter. I don't recall that ever before, a jump scare. But this is definitely one. He's quietly fishing in a water hole. And then she comes out from the thing and dragged back down. She's like, you can't. I think this is supposed to be him being tormented about the idea of feeling bad about Harrison going away. Like he's already regretting sending Harrison off.
Yeah, so this internal turmoil, I think, is what maybe a new audience is not really grasping.
Yeah.
That there's a lot going on here. It's not just everything at face value.
For sure. All the way up into the next scene where he goes out back to hunting that white deer thing. Did you want to say what you thought the symbolism of this white deer? Because there's no way this white deer that's constantly being showed and that they're using CGI to have prance around and look at him and have him pet. There's no way it's not used for symbolism. It can't just be face value.
Well, at first I thought maybe it was supposed to represent Deb, but I'm wondering if maybe it's supposed to represent Harry. But I think your thought was probably more correct because...
So I'm just right a lot? Or?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, I mean,
because it's probably not a person, right?
I think what I was starting to get out of it is I think it's just his literal connection to nature. The whole show, the whole series originally was about his nature. Mm-hmm. He couldn't fight his nature. I am dark inside. My dark passenger is my nature.
Right.
This is the most positive visualization of nature. A white stallion with these glorious horns just being regal amongst snow and trees, just the king of its forest in a way, that I think that it's just him trying to connect to the most positive nature as a way of quieting his most negative side, the darkest side of him. Here's a literal physical white horse versus his dark passenger, and he's trying to connect to that. I think it's why when he's going up to it in this moment, he almost starts to get choked up because he thinks there might be hope for him.
Yeah. Okay. And that, rewatching it, because I was like, wait, why is he crying? Does he feel guilty? But that makes much more sense to me. If he is trying to get that sense of peace, right? Especially with all the chaos that we know is going on in his mind.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that this is the moment that's the actual turning point. I think had he made that connection that he was looking for, that would have been, character-wise, the turning point of Dexter being able to turn away from his dark passenger for good. But that's not what he got.
No, because
Bam!
In comes
a bullet.
The jackass who he was fantasizing about hurting. So, pretty good timing. I mean...
Oh, yeah. And that was it, and that was the moment. So the bullet goes off, drops the horse. The guy even comes out and goes, "Wow, I almost tagged you!" Like, how funny. He said that.
Not like that. He did not say it like that.
Yeah, he went, "Woo!" And then he goes running over. "Did you see that? Well, I almost tagged you. Go!"
Oh, okay. Well, and Dexter, so he's got the deer's blood on his face.
On his face.
And he has this look of just utter insanity where it's really subtle, I think, but if you know his expressions, it's kind of like, oh my god, you just set it off.
Yeah.
You set it off.
And I think he did, because I think that's what it was, is he killed the only connection that Dexter had made with the goodness in the physical form there. And then it was killed right in front of him, blood on his face, and he remembers what it feels like to have blood on his face. And he's like, "Oh, I know who this is." And he was completely falling into the dark passenger at that moment. And the guy even looks up and he's like, "That was pretty cool." Dexter then hits him in the face with a gun, just knocks the guy down, goes over, grabs his knife from his hip.
And you see him just look up and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, he looks up and he says in narration, "It's been a long time."
That's the first time in New Blood that we hear him narrate.
Yep, it was almost 45 minutes into this that we actually heard narration from Dexter. We hear Dexter's inner monologue for the first time. 45 minutes into the first episode.
So that's where I think the audience should be like, oh shit, Dexter is back.
Yeah, that was the moment Dexter was back, and that was the moment the music just changed forever in the show. They never went back to that happy-go-lucky stuff.
Yep.
Now we were back to the instrumentals, the soft piano stuff, the soft guitar stuff.
Yep.
Right where we were. And he's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. So he goes, they show him building the kill room.
Right. And I was confused at why he said, I got to do this right, because I feel like this is a more unorganized Dexter. He is not as, he's pretty shabby at his details. He used to be so spot on. And at this point, he's been so out of practice, if you will. And he misses stuff. He definitely misses things.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think he's in the heat of the moment as it's all changing, and he's trying to remember what he did 10 years ago. He's almost, in a sense, trying to copycat himself. How did I do this? How was it? Was it like this? Pretty much. And then he even said at one point to the dude, sorry about the mess. I'm a little out of practice.
Right, right.
He then cuts the guy's cheek and makes a little makeshift blood slide. He just breaks some glass in his little kill room there.
Yeah.
And then puts a drop of blood on there as this kind of makeshift blood slide, which I thought was pretty cool. It looked pretty raw.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my first thought was like, okay. I mean, does he even care about trophies anymore?
But it was just his ritual. I think he was just going back into ritual. This is what I do, and this is how I do it. He'd never done a kill where he didn't do that. So he was just doing it almost out of muscle memory. This is the part where I cut the cheek and take the blood and put it on the slide. I don't have a slide, so this will have to do.
Right.
It was a little bit later, after he kills the guy and gets the phone call, that he says, I don't need trophies, and leaves it on the body. Which I wish they would have showed a little bit more of how he would have gotten rid of it. But I think we're going to get there as we keep going. It does seem like the disposal of this body is going to be a lot more of a story here.
Oh, and just the disposal, the dismemberment was never this gruesome.
Yeah, this was the first time you see him pick up like a severed head and put it into a bag. You see him with multiple body parts. Like, we'd always seen body parts and gruesomeness in Dexter's show, but it was mostly on crime scenes that he already showed there.
Right.
A lot of times they showed Dexter, everything was already in a bag.
Right.
This one, they had him like pick up like a football this guy's head.
Yeah, this was like very shocking to me, because I just thought, wow, the first Dexter, you went through how many seasons of never getting gruesome from Dexter's perspective, right? So you see him as, I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing by the code. Therefore, it's okay. You see like this nice painted veil of Dexter. And this new blood, it is so much more raw. It is just in your face. Violence, nature, just everything is very, very nitty gritty in this one, I feel like. And that moment, I had a flashback of Rita, because when he finishes his kill and he gets a call from his girlfriend, first thing he says, "Hey, you." That's the first thing he said when Rita was calling and he was in the middle of a kill. So, when after their first date, "Hey, you, what's going on?" She's like, "Oh, I'm just thinking about you." And he's like, "Yeah, I just got some things going on here,
A little busy.
Yeah. So I think the audience should also kind of pick these things up, that, hey, these are hints of, oh no, this cycle is coming back full force, and it's going to be a bit different.
Yeah, 100%. The fact that he used to say that, and every time he gets the phone call with Rita and such, yeah, I thought that was a thing.
Yep.
We then have Dexter leave. And as he's walking away, after slam dunking that head into that bag, just slam dunk.
Gross.
He walks by Deb, and Deb says some shit to him, and he just goes, or she goes, "What are you doing? Because now you're doing this thing that you haven't supposed to been doing." And he's like, "I'm not listening to you."
And this is where Deb is turning, because the first half of this first episode, Deb is very comforting, very proud of him, and now he's disobeying her, right? And that, I think that's where she's gonna flip.
Yeah. And then the camera pans over and you see blood. I can't tell if it was a footprint or just like splots of blood, almost like dripping blood.
I think
but
it
like
was
a lot.
splots.
You think it was like dripping?
Yeah.
From the body or something?
Probably. I mean,
it just seems weird because it was like so much and a pattern that goes away that it couldn't have been like from the chopped up, like maybe when he was carrying the body over.
Yeah.
That it was just pouring bits of blood as he took steps.
Which again confused me because I just thought if he's just flipped back to being old Dexter was highly detail oriented, and now we were just seeing blood all over the place, which
it was a lot.
It was like, wow, that was not a small spot.
Yeah, I thought that when they first zoomed in and showed the one, I was like, oh, he missed a spot. And then they zoom out and saw like, oh, he missed a trail. What?
Yeah, like how distracted is he in his own mind that he is missing the main evidence?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
but then, yeah, that's how that one ends. And I thought that it was done really well as a way to introduce Dexter's back, Dexter's killing. I will say at this point, I'm still really hesitant on if Harrison was actually Harrison. I thought there was a really good chance that some other random kid was pretending to be Harrison to get close to Dexter, like the kid knew Dexter was a murderer or something. But I don't know, because I think it would take an awful lot to convince me that some random kid found out Dexter was actually the Bay Harbor Butcher and tracked him down. That would take a lot of convincing. But there's been a lot of twists and turns before in TVs, so I thought it was possible that this kid was not actually Dexter. Dexter's kid. So
okay, well, he is, so
yeah, I'm pretty sure he is now.
So then we move on to episode 2.
The Dose. The Storm of Fuck.
Storm of Fuck.
I don't know why it had to have that name, why they had to put the name of it inside of a foggy window.
Because this is a much more raw Dexter. It's not just nice, pleasant.
Yeah.
You're going to enjoy this show. There may be some violence, but you'll enjoy it. This is in your face, Dexter.
This is, and the way that they're doing is so different. Every episode before began with the intro. A
little tease, little tap here.
Yeah.
Tappity tap.
Yeah, and it would be like, oh, what you missed last week, and then it would do the music, and then we're into it. This was 7.5 minutes in before it did the intro thing, which is, again, almost no music.
Yeah.
Just...
Yeah, this frantic ice.
Yeah. Frantic chaos, and then it cuts over and you see it say Storm of Fuck in a hotel mirror.
Yep.
But I mean, you're 7.5 minutes into the show.
Yeah.
That's a long time to get to the intro, that especially with something that's already so chaotic.
Yeah.
And nuts, and just it was almost its own jump scare, the intro at this point. And I was like, fuck, because before that, it was Dexter talking to Harrison at the table, making him a sandwich. They're going back and forth for what they're willing to talk about, what they're not.
Right.
Kind of a calm scene, more or less.
Yeah.
So after he's done talking to Harrison, he hears a tapping on the window, and this is when we see the big shift in Deb. She's tapping the bullet against the window, shatters the glass, and just starts yelling at him. Top of her lungs yelling, then shows up behind him, starts like strangling him and muzzling him, being vicious with him, grabbing onto his jaw, talking mad shit, putting the bullet in his mouth and making him swallow it. She is no longer a comfort. She is a terror. She is haunting him at this point. And this is when I was like, holy shit, what is Deb? And at this point, that's when I started thinking Deb is not the voice of reason that Harry was. Mm-hmm. Deb is the manifestation of the absolute trauma of what he's gone through by losing her to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, she was such a focal point in his life, to the point where he killed his own brother in Dexter for Deb. So all of these emotions are being built up on just Deb, and the loss of her he cannot deal with still, even after 10 years.
Yeah, 100%. And he is just terrorized by the fact that he is responsible for her death in some way. Strictly because he didn't kill the person before they got a chance to kill her, and he had the chance twice. So it was just another one of those times where he just didn't kill the person in time, and then he killed them later.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the moment that I went, oh my God, she is terrorizing him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was disturbing, definitely.
Yeah. Where before she was comforting him to get through the trauma of having lost her. Now it's, you're going too far. You're not obeying anymore. I don't have to be nice. And I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. But then it cuts back to Dexter waking up and noticing outside that he's missed a whole bunch of spots from his first kill.
Now, I thought the weird thing is he's got a fire going on out front. He takes a shovel and starts scooping snow from one side to on top of the blood. I didn't understand why he didn't, because I've shoveled snow, just shovel up that piece of snow and walk it to the fire and drop it in. Now you've burnt it all away. It's fine. I mean, it turns out we find out in moments he didn't have the time to do that, but he didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, and I think it's just another sign of him, of new Dexter being so distracted by this internal trauma and all of these things he's thinking that he's missing these details.
Yeah, he's not as methodical. He's not as clean as he used to be. And he's not as quick thinking about how to fix stuff. And we started to see that in Dexter's the season 8. Remember, he was having a hard time managing things, and especially when Deb got involved and she knew he was a killer, and there was this back and forth. It was constantly Deb saying to him, how are you going to fix this? What are we going to do? He's like, I don't know. And he goes, but I will. Like, he was getting frustrated with not having the ability to think things through anymore because he'd gone through so much actual emotion. So we're starting to see this non-methodical Dexter. And as he's scooping up that snow, here comes a rash of police officers with lights going, a whole caravan of them as they pull up. And he's like, oh no. And I'm like, holy shit, what the hell is going on? This dude's either caught or they think a body's nearby. His girlfriend comes out and says, hey babe, you mind if we just hang here? Because that weirdo dude is missing. And because your house is dope, and there's stuff around it, like outside.
Yeah.
We're just going to use your house as a control room, and I brought 300 people here with me because I figured, why wouldn't you say yes? And he was all like, yeah, that's cool. And I was like, not cool.
Well, but he's always about covering his ass, right? So he's not going to raise suspicion. But that did completely shake Marsh here. He thought, oh my God, this is it. He's getting caught.
I was furious at her.
You were completely worked.
Because I was also like, who does that? Who shows up with the lights on and 30 police cars? Like,
a small town and a mechanism for freaking you out for no reason.
I was like, why didn't she call? Or why didn't she show up by herself? Just show up by herself in a van and be like, hey, yo, we want to use this for these reasons. And he goes, oh yeah, of course. And then she goes, okay, cool. I'm a radio. Everyone goes, hey guys, he fell for it. Come around. And they're all like a block away anyways. But she showed up with everyone and lights on. I was like, oh my God. That would terrorize the hell out of me. If I show up, I have a brother-in-law who's a police officer. If he showed up to the house just to say hey and drop off Christmas presents, but he was in a police car with blinking lights and 4 vans behind him with the same, I'd be like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah.
Why didn't she just call?
I don't know, because that'd be a good commercial, a good little preview, a little snippet of, what's happening. Yeah. So that happens, and then...
I'm starting to think that the mechanism of his girlfriend being a police officer is just so that they can, in every episode, put in something that makes you think, he's caught now! They got him!
Yeah.
And then they go, just kidding, it's his girlfriend again.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to the hotel. The girl's in there who drank all that champagne. Yeah. And she's just puking a bunch into the sink. And then she goes and lays down. And it kind of just zooms out to the camera again. That there's this creepy dude watching her. And we still don't know who it is. Yeah. Then his Dexter's girlfriend, the police, shows up to the rich oil tycoon's house to ask him for some sort of favor. But they cut back to that later.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm wondering... just because of the juxtaposition of that, if the tycoon is involved with this hotel in some way.
Right.
If he has imprisoned this girl in some way. But the girl is also not the girl who spilled the coffee, which upset the tycoon.
Right. It was different
girl.
Yeah, this was the girl... Because the one that spilled the coffee is the police chief's daughter.
Yeah.
This girl is the one who was just passing through town, who the police chief bought dinner for.
Yeah.
And said, oh, here's, go get yourself something.
Yeah. They're standing over the fire, and when they go beneath the stones and the fire, you see what appears to be the guy's head in a bag underneath the fire.
Oh, it was gross.
It was gross, and it was weird, because it was also the moment that Dexter killed him. He saw a picture of ice fish and said, it's not Miami Bay, but it'll do. But now it looks like he didn't dump it in the ocean, or in the lake, because you were concerned that he was preserving evidence by putting it in a cold lake.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's because I don't understand how frozen lakes work, but I thought, oh, it's going to be frozen forever and super preserved.
Yeah.
It's not the case here.
But it seems like he dug up the fire, put the body parts beneath the fire, and then lit more fire. But it also doesn't look like it's burning, so it seems pretty well protected underneath that too. So I'm a little curious about that.
Yeah.
How's he going to be disposing of it? Anything you think that anybody's missing as far as like any kind of symbolism or things that you've noticed? Any kind of callbacks to anything from a previous episode?
I think we covered it.
Okay. If we didn't, we'll write it down and we'll talk about it on the next one.
Yeah, let us know what you guys think. If this has kind of made you think a bit more about the show, hopefully give it another chance. And if it helps, maybe go back and watch Dexter, the last episode. That might help just to remind you of where the place that Dexter was in. Mm-hmm. But I think for us, having watched Dexter's, very recently, I think that really has given us a good handle on his evolution, because we have to remember that Dexter New Blood is an evolution of this character. It is not going to be the same.
Yeah, he said so much when he went with the blood slide. He said, I'm an ever-evolving monster. I don't need trophies anymore. I was like, oh, okay.
So I really wouldn't be shocked if at some point he ends up being like just the wandering person who's mumbling crazy things to himself, because this is kind of a story of someone, who had, a pretty seemingly normal life, right? I mean, in Miami he had a normal life. Obviously it didn't go well. Here, in the beginning, he has a normal life. From the outside, it does not go well. It's like, Dark Passenger keeps coming back. But even more so, no more Dark Passenger. We got Crazy Deb now. I don't know what you call her, but...
Yeah, just an absolute terror.
Terror Deb. Deb the Terror.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting ride. Definitely more gritty, more graphic. So I think just be prepared for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to see the little things. I like the little nods to the past stuff. I liked the little blood slide and saying he didn't need it. The way he answered the phone, hey, you. Those little types of things. The changing of the intro, the way.
Yeah.
I think they're taking a very artistic approach to tell a story within the story.
Yeah. So keep those things in mind. Let us know if there's things you caught that, maybe we missed, that you think is important in telling this story. We look forward to breaking down more episodes, and hopefully you guys are enjoying this. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, give the old 5-star review, the old like and subscribe and such, the 5 stars, the review comments.
Yeah, all those things.
If you guys want to hit us up directly about what's going on here, I am at Ref Marsh. If you wanted to hit me up directly to call me names or something, that's the place to do it.
I'm at WOTR The Show.
Yeah. Absolutely. This one's been brought to you by Single Malt Studios.
Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers.